Welcome to Clarity Design. Today we're just going to have another look at textures, and in this case we're going to have a look in particular at placing textures on polygon surfaces. First of all, let's just remind ourselves how to place a texture. So this lesson I'm going to use a grid texture. It should become obvious why in a minute or two. So let's have a quick look. So first of all, we just right click, get the marking menu up, we go all the way down to assign new material and let go. And then in assign new material you can assign whatever material you want from these: Antistropic, Blinn, Lambert, Fongy, doesn't matter really. So I'll go for a Blinn, make it a little bit shiny. And then what I want to do is I'm going to attach something to the colour here. So I'm going to map, use the map button, and I'm going to attach the grid to it. So you can see it says checker here, that's the one I'm going to choose, and that's just going to apply that to the surface. And you can see what a bad job the computer does of this the first time out. So this is just a basic spaceship kind of model here, just all made up of one polygon. Just as a demonstration, what you do is you'd map each surface texture to the individual model or the different parts of the model. So texturing can take a really long time, and if done properly and done really well, it can take a really long time to master and to get good at. So you can see how bad that is when it first strikes up, and you might think that if you render it using this button here, if you render it, then it's going to look a little bit better. Well, it will look a little bit better, but you can see that actually the texture map that's being shown there is not very good at all. So let's have a quick look at why that is. For this I'm just going to open up this box over here. This is the UV texture editor. To get to that normally you can go to Window, UV texture editor, it's there. So you can open that up, and if you have a look, when we've got that selected, you can see there's the texture in the top quadrant, and at the moment you can't see any of the spaceship. Well, you can see little patches of the spaceship. If I just try and select some bits, you might be able to see them just ever so slightly in different colours there. So at the moment the texture is not mapped very well onto the surface. Luckily Maya has some quick fixes that you can use, and that's these objects here, also available up here in Create UVs: planar, cylindrical, spherical, automatic mapping. Okay, and they're a great place to start with mapping out your textures. So let's have a quick look. Let's just try a couple of these out. So spherical mapping, as soon as I click on it, you can see it's put a sphere around the object. Perfect if you're going to be doing something like a world or a globe or something like that, and you're trying to texture that. And each of these, so this spherical map has got a bunch of handles on it, which means that we can scale, rotate, resize, and play around with that spherical map, depending on, so you can see how I'm wrapping that up or opening it. And that's changing how it's the texture is mapped onto the surface. None of these are actually very effective. I'll just click just one here because I can actually rotate that texture on there as well, just show you that. Probably my best bet at this stage actually is just to do a planar map. So again, I'm going to create UVs, and I can just go straight over the top of the one I just made, planar map. You can see there that the planar map is just mapped out on the side there, and again I can use the handles to resize, and I can use this to rotate, so that I'm getting what looks like quite a decent looking texture, quite evenly spaced across the whole of the ship. So I've not got too much bad distortion here. So what I'm looking for, and this is the reason why we use grids, is as much of the shapes themselves, the squares, to be square and not rectangular. So you can see some distortion here, across there. We can see a bit of distortion down here. So it's far from perfect, but it's a good start. The other thing is that a flat projection like this, which is coming basically just down from one angle, it's like it's being shifted straight over the whole object from the top at the moment, being pushed straight through the whole object. That's all right. So we could just play around with that. You can see that my handles are a little bit distorted. There we go. So we'll just square those up a little bit there from the top. So that's looking a little bit nicer now. It's still a little bit rectangular here, but we can sort that out if we need to. So I'm using this position to get the UVs correct to begin with. So let's go back to that UV texture editor, and you can see now much clearer the outline of the spaceship and where the map is according to the spaceship. Whilst I've got this handle selected, I can still manipulate that. Now I can use all sorts of tools in this UV texture editor to help me to map textures onto the surface, I can pick up individual UVs. So I just need to right click. I'm going to go to UV, so that's a marking menu again. Go to UV. You can see there's loads of options down here as to what you need to do or what you can do. Copying UVs, relax, unfold. There's just a whole lot that you need to kind of dig into there and start having a look at. So we're just going to go to UV, select some UVs. So I can just pick up these UVs at the front here and I can start manipulating those by hovering over. Let's just pick that up. I can pick up points and move them around. So before we said that there was, the front there looked a little bit distorted, so we could try and play around with that a little bit to try and even up that distortion a little bit. And you can see how that, putting that around, I can start to position this so that I'm getting an even shape of the cubes across the front of the ship there. And I could keep playing around with that until I was happy with the position of that. But how about if you want to get your texture now and you want to take that into Photoshop, or those points into Photoshop, and start painting directly onto the surface? Well, actually you might not have Photoshop at home, you might have something else. So let's just have a look and see what we can do. What we can do is we can go to polygons and we can take a UV snapshot. Okay, and that UV snapshot, we just need to turn this up so we've got decent size here that we can play around. You can check where it's going to save that image. So you've got out UV here, inside images, inside default, inside projects, inside mode, so you can go and find it. Okay, you can check some of the other changes. You might want to change the IFF format. You'll be alright in Photoshop, but some of the other programs you might want to use, you might want to pick something else. There are advantages to using the IFF. If you want to, you'll soon find out later on if you start playing around with it. Anyway, if you click OK, that'll save that file out. So that's gone and been saved. You can check that it's been saved. It says file saved there, and it's basically saved this image, this set of UVs out for you, and you can open that image in Photoshop as a background layer or as a different part of the layer, and then work with painting on top of it and save that out, and then start applying that as a texture. And you'd apply that just by going to the object itself. Let's just make sure we're in object mode. Select the object, and you can assign new material, or you could change the material you've got. So I'll just do that so you can see exactly how to do that. So if I go to object mode, I pick that object up, I'm going to go along to the end of my texture, and at the moment you'll remember that I attached to my blend one, just being a bit slow there, I attached a connection to that, so I'm just going to break that connection by right clicking here and breaking that connection, and then I can map instead something else to it, so I can go and map a file to it as I did in the previous tutorial. I could do exactly the same thing. So if I had the color map there, I could do exactly the same thing with bump mapping. Okay, and bump mapping is an important thing to do, so let's just do a checker there. And you can see that at the moment you can't see any difference here, but if I do a render, you can see how that checkerboard has been now rendered onto the surface as a bump map. A bump map gives you an artificial idea of depth, and it uses black as low and white as high. So we can change the values here to change the depth. But let's say that you had the surface of a planet, or the surface of some skin, or pretty much any surface, and you had dark and light points. If you wanted to change those dark and light points, whether they be black or white or green or whatever colour, you can apply that texture also to a bump map, and then that will allow the surface to be raised or lowered by that amount that you specify. And that just means that you could get a more realistic looking surface quite easily.